Texas Ranger Frank L. Schmid in the 1880s. Well-heeled and well-armed, Schmid joined the Texas Rangers in 1886. He was in Ranger Company D when he was shot in the line of duty in 1889. Unfortunately, he never fully recovered and died from complications from his wounds in 1893. After the Civil War, thousands of young men went west in search of work, opportunity, and their fortunes. Many found work as well-armed cowboys on Texas cattle drives and ranches across the western United States. Falsely accused of killing a deputy U.S. Marshal, Ned Christy was shot to death in 1892. His body was placed on a board while U.S. deputy marshals posed with him and their 1873 and 1886 Winchester lever-action rifles. Christy holds his .44-40 1873 Winchester for the last time. Billy the Kid's pal, Charlie Boudre, and his wife Manuela posed for this portrait in Las Vegas, New Mexico in 1878. Boudre carried this very copy when he was gunned down by Pat Garrett and posse in December 1880. Those dark stains are believed to be his blood stains. Smoking, drinking, gambling, and pointing pistols at each other seems to be the way these three New Mexico cowboys had fun. This 1882 photo offers a good example of the kind of men who fought in the Lincoln County War. Cattle Annie and Little Britches, the most famous female outlaws ever to strap on a 6-gun in their teens. With pistols at their sides and grit in their veins, they rode beside gangs, stole horses, and carried messages across territories where death was a daily shadow. Lincoln County Warriors. 4 drunk and armed Seven Rivers Warriors of New Mexico pose for photo in 1878. They fought on both sides of the Lincoln County War. While working as sheriff of Arizona's Apache County, Commodore Perry Owens earned fame for his 1886 shootout in Holbrook, where he killed 3 of the Blevins crew and wounded a 4th in 5 shots. In this photo, Owens is wearing a Buscadero rig, a holster style rarely seen in Old West photographs. An 1870s working cowboy poses with quiet confidence in his modified Stetson boss of the plains. A revolver rests in its holster, ammunition belt laden with cartridges across his waist. He wears typical work pants suitable for horseback riding and outdoor labor. Look closer, a ring glints on his finger, hinting at a story beyond the dusty trail. Joe Fowler in 1880. Fowler was a notorious killer, rumored to have murdered 30 to 40 people. Working as a deputy sheriff, he often targeted individuals for corrupt politicians. He was known for his ruthlessness, killing even unarmed prisoners and burning his half-brother alive. Fed up with his reign of terror, a mob lynched him in 1884. 6 decades after the California Gold Rush, adventurous young men from around the world were still flooding the West, seeking fame, fortune, and a good fight. With most of the West settled and fenced in 1910, the Mexican Revolution's charismatic leader, Pancho Villa, offered hot-blooded, well-armed young men the ultimate adventure, a chance to prove their mettle in battle as paid mercenaries in Pancho Villa's American Legion of Honor. Depending on their work environment, cowboys wore all types of chaps: shotgun, Texas wing, batwing. Most were made of cowhide, but in the colder north, many were made of sheepskin or goat hide, with the fur intact. This Caldwell cowboy must have modeled his cowhide chaps off those woolies. Most historical cowboy photos record unknown individuals who posed in studio shots that reflected their pride in the lifestyle. Showing one Colt single action in his hand and another holstered, this typical cowboy wears genuine cowboy boots, chaps, hat, bandana, and holster. The Kinney Gang in 1880. John Kinney, a former cavalry sergeant, had a ranch a mile or two west of Mesilla that was well known as the headquarters and rendezvous for all the outlaws in the country. He eventually rode for the Dolan side in the Lincoln County War. Regulators Fred Waite and Henry Brown were warriors who ended up riding with Billy Kid and his gang after the war. Gus Gildea, a gunman turned Selman scout, worked for Arizona cattle baron Henry Clay Hooker. His lawless exploits during the Lincoln County War underscore the era's blurred lines between outlaw and mercenary. Dan Dedrick was a close ally of the Kid. He always claimed he took part in the McSween fight and carried a .44 slug in his left elbow to prove it, but his name doesn't appear in the many accounts of the fight. Dan later owned Chisholm's old ranch on the Bosque Grande, where the Kid and his outlaw friends often congregated. Jim Elder and Bill Tilghman holding hunting rifles, 1873. Bill Tilghman was approached by Bat Masterson to serve as a deputy sheriff from 1878, which earned him the respect to work in various law enforcement jobs for the rest of his life. He's best known for single-handedly capturing Bill Doolin in 1895. Posed with his Henry .44 rimfire, this young cowboy is ready for any action he might encounter on the trail or in town. Old West gun collectors who have an affinity for Henry rifles, like this cowboy's, will be proud to display and use. Two African-American and Hispanic cowboys pose in a studio circa 1915. They both wear woolly chaps, bandanas, and wide-brimmed hats. One holds a revolver and rope, the other rests his hand on a holstered pistol. Several Ute people pose with guns in 1867. The Ute people have deep ties to Utah, the Rocky Mountains, and the Colorado Plateau, a testament to their enduring legacy as an integral part of the region's history and cultural landscape. An intriguing photograph captioned Arizona Rangers, but based on the style of clothing the men are wearing, it may have been taken in the late 1870s or early 1880s. Although the Arizona Rangers were officially established in 1901, a few Ranger units were formed as early as the 1860s to fight the Apaches. All of the men in the photo are armed with repeating rifles, a couple of which look like 1873 Winchesters. Young cowboys fooling around. Two young guns of the Wild West pose with swagger and mischief, their hats wide, pistols drawn, and knives ready. This rare 19th century photograph captures the reckless spirit of frontier life, where danger, laughter, and lawlessness blended under the scorching sun of the untamed frontier. Portrait of a cowboy or a scout, Bowdoin, Alberta. He looks the real deal there with his cartridge belt, his knife, and his Winchester rifle. This photo of Will C. Barnes, an Arizona cowboy, is typical of the type of young men who came to Dodge City in the late 1800s, bringing cattle to market. Barnes was a Medal of Honor recipient, cattle rancher, served in the legislatures of Arizona Territory, a conservationist, and author. Texas Ranger Ira Aten is definitely armed to the teeth in this 1887 photo. Notice his knife and pistol on the same side. Several Texas Ranger photos seem to show this preference, perhaps to favor the best hand in a fight. James Stott, Northern Arizona, 1888. He wears his Smith & Wesson like he owns the desert, tucked in a fringed holster with a Missouri knife riding just ahead of it. But swagger didn't save him. Later that same year, during the Pleasant Valley Range War, they hanged him. He was only 24. Before Oklahoma was a state, the Seminole Light Horse Police rode hard and ruled harder. 10 men kept the peace, 1 captain, 1 lieutenant, 8 brave souls. They carried Colt revolvers and Winchester rifles, symbols of law and survival. They guarded money, hunted outlaws, and delivered justice fast, by rope or by whip. 4 never made it home. 6 cowboys from the ranch of legendary Texas Ranger turned cattle baron John Slaughter, 1885. This portrait captures a rare and powerful glimpse into the true spirit of working frontier cowboys. Their boots scuffed, their hats pulled low, these are the faces of those who tamed the borderlands not with words, but with grit. 2 Mexican revolutionary soldiers on horseback, 1910s. The soldiers sit tall in the saddle, rifles across their chests, bandoliers heavy with ammo. Dust clings to their boots, courage to their faces. Behind them, children watch quietly, witnesses to a country tearing itself apart and being reborn in the fire of revolution. Portrait of a well-dressed border cowboy from New Mexico, circa 1890. This meticulously dressed gentleman wears a white suit with natty touches that include his pristine sombrero charro, a pinned cravat, watch fob, and pearl-handled pistol in its embellished holster. The Union Pacific organized this posse to chase the Wild Bunch bandits after the 1900 train robbery holdup in Tipton, Wyoming. The posse car that transported these assorted lawmen was a transformed baggage car equipped with ramps so that posses and their mounts could quickly reach the robbery scene. Bad man Rub Burroughs no longer has use for his Marlin rifle, probably a Model 1888, or his .75 Remington and Peacemaker Colt revolvers. He was certainly well armed for his final ride, though you'd think someone could have spared him a better hat.